It's almost that day. Time is here. We've all been waiting for this August 17th deadline that was put in place when the National Association of Realtors put out that some things needed to change and that commissions were no longer allowed to be advertised in the MLS, commissions that were being paid on behalf of the seller to the buyer's agent. So we are here. Now we're going to talk about what this means now that we've seen this. We've had all the dialogue over the last, month to 6 months, whatever. And now it's time to figure out how this conversation comes, how we're going to talk to our sellers, what we need to expect when we're talking to our sellers, and how we are going to all be okay. And the sun will come up August 18th. Stay tuned. What's up, guys? Jeremy Kane, Real Estate Agent Playbook. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've been paying attention the last couple months, we've talked a little bit about this commission lawsuit, but now it's here. I've had the opportunity to really, think about it and collect my thoughts. It is just my opinion. You have brokers, you have rules in your MLS, over 600 across the country, but I like to bring ideas and mindset ideas and everything I can do to help you win at the game of real estate every single day. So if you like what you hear, whether you're listening on the podcast, watching on YouTube, or another social media channel, do all the things, show me some love, subscribe, follow, and so on. We just like to help you win every single day at the game of real estate. So let's really get into this. So ultimately, a lot of people have pointed to this just being a listing agent conversation. The industry's, said, let's just have better conversations with our sellers. Obviously, sellers are going to be asking, right? This is in the news. The headlines that came out, shortly after the settlement came down, the 6% buyer, real estate commission is dead. All the things. You've seen those headlines, and so have your clients. So we must now be ready to address them, as everything that NAR put forward in the settlement option that hasn't been completely agreed upon, as I've heard yet. But we are going to make these changes in the industry because ultimately it was decided that we needed to be more transparent. So this starts with the seller conversation. So the obligation of the seller to pay the buyer's agent was always negotiable. However, how, it was presented and the opportunity to, MLS has said you had to have this percentage, you have to have something, you have to offer something. All of that got pretty convoluted, and the judges decided that, the plaintiff had a case here. And so as agents, we need to really step back and figure out, okay, how are we going to answer this conversation? The truth is that you can talk about all you want. You can say everything you want. You can say, well, when you bought this house, the seller paid your commission for your buyer's agent, all the things. But why don't we just stop there and say, yeah, this is something that industry-wide has become fairly normal, that the seller offers the buyer's agent commission through the listing commission. Some people set it out as, this is how much it costs to sell your house, and me as the listing agent is going to offer to the buyer. That's where the transparency and the back alley deals that's where the consumer felt slighted. So we're kind of moving away from that. So just have the conversation and say, but at the end of the day, it's just net to you, right? Just as when we were getting $100,000 over asking and all the things, all you were really concerned about at the end of the day was net to you or XYZ, whatever that was. So we're going to talk about net to you. We're going to talk about all of that. But at the end of the day, let's not, hype this up as more than something that could come through in a contract that is literally a line item, right? And so as we move forward and we progress and we get more comfortable with this and this becomes the norm, we now have to understand that that's how we're going to have these conversations, and it's okay to have these conversations. I would suggest having conversations on the front end. I would suggest doing a little bit of due diligence, picking up the phone, calling on comps, when you're doing pricing to see, what the concessions were, if there was commission offered and so on. So you can really get down to the net of that offer, because all of that information, not only if there was compensation offered, you could talk to the seller about what that that average is and in the neighborhood and what's going on. But you can also use that when you're creating appraisal packages and things that are within the guidelines of your state. I know not all states the listing agent can have contact with the appraiser, but in my state they can. So find that data, go get that data, work a little bit harder for that data so that you have it to lean back on when you're having these conversations. Then, just as you explain the process, just talk about, okay, this is where this line item is negotiated, right? We can agree and we can talk about marketing, we can talk about all that, but at the end of the day, the contract, at time of contract to buy and sell, whether it's in your contract like it is here in Colorado or, somewhere else on a different form that's presented at that time, that is where we will really focus on that number. Just explain what's coming, explain that this will all be decided at that time. You can, put what they're offering, you can tell people what you're offering, you can do all the things. But that's what my approach will be. Like, it's just going to be part of the offer. When we sit down with the listing price or a, pricing strategy, we say, hey, this is kind of what the comps say, but ultimately the market will tell us, right? When we were going way up, said, hey, this is where I think it's going to appraise, but hopefully the market tells us it's higher. And then I can have that data to give to the appraiser to show that 10 people offered, over asking and all the things. So that's my thought, is just make it one of those contract incentives or decentives, whatever you want to say, and, take it all into account, all with a grain of salt when everything's on the paper there. So I've been hearing a lot of old school kind of industry professionals be like, well, this is what I'm going to charge. And, it is what it is. And it's a listing agent's duty to have that conversation and tell them why they should offer a buyer's agent commission. I understand, but the true obligation in, the fiduciary responsibility, and I get it if you're a transaction brokerage state or whatever, we have exclusive rights to sell in Colorado contract agreements, and in that we are fiduciaries to the seller. So isn't it in our fiduciary responsibility to do what's in the seller's best interest? And so forcing them or telling them that you're not going to take a listing or, telling them that you're going to do this is absolutely against your fiduciary responsibility. So take a step back, take a little bit different approach, and understand that agents that are having this conversation and adapting to this change and doing it are not ruining the industry. And it's not choose the real estate industry as we know it or their client, because contractually we're obligated usually to have a fiduciary responsibility to our client. So as we're working through this, understand and think about that, right? How passionately are you that this industry, you walk into the door and you get X% because that's what your market is and that's what your MLS, is used to and all the things? Or is it, hey, I'm of way more value to my client if I educate them on what's going on, educate them on the situation, and then we negotiate that, right? We use my negotiation skills that they are paying me for as the listing agent at that time to work out the best deal that works for them. The deal that the seller wants, the deal that the buyer wants. Buyer wants to buy, seller wants to sell. You know what that means. So that's one note that I wanted to make, is that this isn't, anything crazy. It's not anyone trying to ruin the industry. But when you really step back and think about it, this is your seller's bottom line. This is what money is going into their bank account. Sometimes, usually, one of the biggest checks that they will receive in their lifetime. So when that comes to that, I'm all in on the sellers. I'm all in on my clients, right? I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to make the best deal for my client, buyer or seller. And so just be very careful with how you're talking about that and how, your buyer broker friendly comments and things like that, because if you're buyer broker friendly and you're writing a check for your client, that's exactly where we started this, and we want to get to that transparency. So now let's talk about to disclose or not disclose, right? 100%, make sure you're listening to your brokerages, make sure you're listening to your brokers, make sure you're listening to your state, your MLSs, all the people that we've signed agreements to follow all the rules with. But when we step back and talk about this, let's have some role play scenarios. First and foremost, I'm just going to ask the question, and you in your head, I want you to think about what you would say. So first, I'm the buyer's agent. I call you up. Would your seller accept 10% less on that offer? The buyer's agent, I'll give you a chance to think about what you were going to say. I'm not obligated to tell you that, but put in an offer and we'll see what we can do. Right? Or, put it on paper. I'll present it. I'll let you know what the seller says. Okay? Perfect. Role play scenario number 2. Is your seller offering a buyer's agent commission of X%? Of course they are. I'm a good listing agent. No. Stop. Respond as you would in scenario 1 to scenario 2. Because both have to do with the net, right? If you are saying that your seller is offering compensation to a buyer's agent, you are telling them that they are willing to accept less than the marketed price because that number is no longer marketed in the MLS. And so I know for a fact, I've sat in, a million, trainings with agents who talk about their, boast about all their stuff and do all the things. And they're always, my seller's best interest. This comes up a lot in divorce situations. Like, you aren't supposed to disclose that there's, angst there there's nothing there. You're not supposed to disclose that there's something in that situation that would cause the seller to consider less money, right? Because that's the fiduciary thing. So why is it okay to disclose, hey, my seller's, now that it's not advertised, it's not required to be in MLS. Why is it okay to disclose that they'll take X% less by way of a buyer's agent commission? Just my 2 cents. Think about that. Take from it what you will. Like I said, I'm not the law. I'm not the rules. But I think that, again, we continue to push that we're going to negotiate this at time of contract. However, that has been laid out. In all cases, buyer and seller have to have that transparency and understand where the money's coming from, where the money's going, and so on. So at the end of the day, change is inevitable. It's been decided. It wasn't our choice to get here, but I want you to know that it's going to be okay. Have these conversations, have these role plays, and just come to the table with the heart to have the conversations and prepare your clients for the contract process, just as we have all along. The non-disclosure of compensation, as I see it, it's an advantage to the sellers because they could have the opportunity to pay a little bit less than they might have, especially when we get in those multiple offer situations again. But also, it's a very fair way to treat the entire process because regardless, the buyer on the other end, the buyer's agent and buyer have had that agreement and they understand that. And so why would you take away because a lot of people are going to have the conversation that says, hey, do you want me to show you a house that is offering X% less than, what you are obligated to pay me? Not my suggestion. I would not do that, but they're going to have those conversations. So if you just say, we'll negotiate at time of contract, then okay, let's go. Right. And so you're doing the buyer's agent a favor that says, okay, yeah, I'm going to give you the opportunity to put what you think you're worth into this contract. And then you can go take it and we'll figure it out. We'll negotiate it. We'll talk about it when all the cards are on the table, and it'll be okay. And so let's talk about getting to that professional and transparent point. And I think this starts with this listing conversation. What conversations are we having with the seller? How are we going to, attack this elephant in the room? I will tell you that you have done more research and a lot of more of the moving parts than your consumers will have done. So your obligation as a licensee is to bring that information to them, play within those rules, and just be a professional. The more professional you are right now, the more market share you're going to take, the more transparent you can be. I think you're going to be ahead of the game. You're going to have these conversations. You're going to have the reps. And I promise you, if you go to this and you say, okay, I'm going to play within the guidelines. I understand exactly what the lawsuit was concerning, and I'm going to play by the rules that was, decided by a judge. Then you start to have those conversations. as these workarounds and as all of these things kind of get picked apart, you're going to be sitting there, ton of experience, a ton of at-bats in that realm. And it starts as a listing agent to have those reps, to have those at-bats, and to make it fully transparent and make it as a part of your relationship with the seller, that they understand exactly what's going on and how it could benefit them, and how, you know, it may be a buyer's market at the time and they might have to, you know, pony up a little more money. You never know. So it's going to be okay. The sun will come up August 18th. This is my last episode before then. So we'll catch you on the flip side, I guess, and keep getting out there, being transparent, and being the professional that you got into this industry to be, and you will continue to be compensated famously for it. We'll talk to you next time.